Turns out the best business investment I ever made wasn't in real estate or stocks. It was in my husband's ego. And Thursday at 2 p.m., that investment was about to pay dividends. I was sitting in my accountant's office in downtown Phoenix, reviewing quarterly reports from Pinnacle Construction Group, when my phone buzzed. Heath, my husband of 12 years, calling during work hours, which immediately set off alarm bells because the man treats his phone like it's surgically attached to his hand during important business meetings. "Ada, I found a buyer for the house," he announced. No greeting, no preamble, just straight to the gut punch. "Deal closes next week. I'm moving in with Simone. You'll need to figure out your own living situation." I almost choked on my overpriced artisan water. Almost. Instead, I took a slow sip, let the silence hang there like wet laundry, and replied with the calmness of someone ordering a latte. "Okay, Heath, you deserve to be happy." The relief in his voice was pathetic. "Thanks for understanding, Ada. I knew you'd be mature about this. Men are so predictable." I hung up, looked at my accountant, bless him, his eyes were wider than dinner plates, and said, "Cancel everything. I need to get home." He started to speak, probably to offer condolences or legal advice. But I was already grabbing my bag and heading for the parking garage where my Tesla waited like a very expensive, very silent getaway car. The 25-minute drive from downtown Phoenix to our Scottsdale house gave me exactly enough time to plan every delicious detail of what was about to unfold. Traffic on the Loop 101 was surprisingly light for a Thursday afternoon, which I took as a sign from the universe that karma was finally clocking in for her shift. See, here's what Heath didn't know. What he'd never known in the 10 years since Pinnacle Construction Group opened its doors with that ridiculous ribbon-cutting ceremony where he wore a hard hat like he'd ever actually worked construction a day in his life. That $340,000 my grandfather left me in 2015, the money Heath thought I'd invested in mutual funds or whatever women do with money, I'd funneled every cent of it into his startup as an anonymous investor through a series of LLCs that would make a Russian nesting doll jealous. 62%. That's my stake in Pinnacle Construction Group. Majority shareholder. The real boss. The person who technically signs off on every major decision, including, and this is the poetry of it all, his $185K annual salary. For 10 years, Heath walked around Scottsdale country clubs, networking events, and Chamber of Commerce meetings, playing the self-made entrepreneur. Built it from the ground up, he'd say, chest puffed out like a rooster at sunrise. Started with nothing but a dream and a business plan. Meanwhile, I was the dream. I was the business plan. I was the entire financial foundation his ego was built on, and he had absolutely no clue. The corporate structure was beautiful in its simplicity. The board of directors, comprised of my attorney, my accountant, and 2 business partners who owed me favors, met quarterly. Heath attended as president and CEO, presenting reports, making proposals, feeling important. What he didn't realize was that every major decision had already been approved by me before he even walked into the conference room. That corner office with the sweeping desert views? I approved the lease. The company Tesla he drives? I authorized the purchase. His executive assistant's salary? Approved. The annual bonuses? Me again. Even the damn espresso machine in the break room required my signature. And Simone? Oh, Simone. The 32-year-old HR manager he hired 8 months ago because she had great organizational skills and really understood company culture. What she really understood was how to book the same hotels for business conferences that Heath attended, how to expense romantic dinners as client meetings, and how to have absolutely zero discretion when using company email to coordinate their affair. Did I mention I have full access to all corporate communications? Because I do. Have for years. It's amazing what you can discover when you actually own the company your husband thinks he runs. I pulled into our driveway at exactly 3 p.m., our beautiful Scottsdale contemporary with the mountain views and the infinity pool that Heath kept calling my house at dinner parties. Technically, the deed was in both our names, but the down payment? All mine. The mortgage? Paid from joint accounts that I'd been funding primarily for the last 5 years, while Heath's salary went to his investments. read golf memberships, and trying to impress clients who definitely weren't sleeping with him. His BMW was parked at an angle in the driveway, trunk open, like he couldn't wait to start his new life. How romantic. How utterly, devastatingly predictable. I walked through our front door to find Heath in our bedroom. Sorry, my bedroom, packing his Italian suits into a leather suitcase that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He was practically glowing, humming some off-key tune, completely oblivious to the tsunami that was about to hit. "Hey," he said, not even looking up. "Didn't expect you home so early. I'm just grabbing my stuff. I'll be out by tonight, and we can have our lawyers handle the rest." "Sure," I said, placing a black folder on the kitchen island, right next to the coffee maker we'd received as a wedding gift 12 years ago. How time flies when you're living a lie. "But before you go, you need to sign these documents." Heath walked over, still smiling, still completely clueless. "What documents?" "From Pinnacle," I said casually, pulling a bottle of water from the fridge like we were discussing weekend plans instead of his entire future unraveling. "Just some corporate paperwork." He opened the folder with the confidence of a man who'd never had to face consequences for his actions. The transformation was poetry. His face went from suntanned Arizona bronze to hospital sheet white in approximately 2.5 seconds. The smile evaporated. His hands started shaking, just slightly, enough that the papers rustled. What is this?" His voice cracked. Actual voice crack, like a teenage boy at his first school dance. "That," I said, taking a leisurely sip of my water, "is your termination notice from Pinnacle Construction Group, effective immediately. Gross misconduct, inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, misuse of corporate resources. The board voted unanimously this morning. Well, technically 3 hours ago while you were probably texting Simone about which Pottery Barn furniture to buy for your new love nest." Heath's hands were full-on trembling now. "You can't. I built this company. You can't just—" "Actually, I can," I interrupted, and the satisfaction of those 3 words was worth every penny of that $340K investment. "See that second page? That's the corporate structure of Pinnacle Construction Group. Notice anything interesting?" He flipped the page. His face somehow went even whiter, which I didn't think was medically possible. "Saguaro Holdings LLC owns 62% of Pinnacle," I explained, my voice the kind of calm you hear in nature documentaries right before the lioness takes down the gazelle. "Saguaro Holdings is my company. Has been since 2015. You know, when my grandfather passed and left me that small inheritance, you told everyone I probably spent on shoes." Heath dropped the papers like they were on fire. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping on a dock, which was fitting because he was definitely out of his element now. That's impossible," he stammered, gripping the edge of the kitchen island. "I founded Pinnacle. I wrote the business plan." You wrote a business plan that my attorney revised 17 times before it was even remotely viable," I corrected, examining my nails like this conversation was mildly boring instead of the most satisfying moment of my entire marriage. "You founded a company with money you didn't have, using a structure you didn't understand, and for 10 years, Heath, you've been working for me." The realization was dawning on him like a very slow, very painful sunrise. The board meetings, scripted. Well, your part was scripted. We let you think you were making decisions, but honestly, that was just efficient management. Why micromanage when you can let someone think they're in charge? Heath sank into one of our bar stools, the expensive ones he'd insisted on buying from that boutique furniture store in Old Town Scottsdale, because successful people sit on quality stools. Those stools cost $800 each. I approved that purchase too. "The investors I met with?" He tried again, his voice getting smaller. "Actors. Well, one was my attorney, 2 were actual business associates who owed me favors, and the rest were people we paid very well to nod enthusiastically at your presentations." I opened the fridge and pulled out a bottle of Chardonnay. 3 p.m. felt like an appropriate time for wine, given that I'd just demolished my husband's entire sense of self. "Want a glass?" "Oh, wait. You're technically trespassing in my house now, so maybe not." "Our house," he said weakly. My down payment. My mortgage payments for the last 5 years while you poured your salary into that ridiculous boat you bought and never use. I poured myself a generous glass. The boat that's also registered under Saguaro Holdings, by the way. You're going to want to return the keys. Heath's face was doing this interesting thing where different emotions kept fighting for dominance. Shock, anger, humiliation, panic. It was like watching a slot machine trying to land on the jackpot of human misery. Simone, he said suddenly, like she was a life raft. Simone and I are in love. You can't take away. Simone received her termination notice about 45 minutes ago, I interrupted, checking my phone. Actually, correction, 47 minutes ago. Time flies when you're committing corporate fraud. She was fired for gross misconduct, specifically conducting an inappropriate relationship with her supervisor, falsifying expense reports, and using company resources for personal matters. I pulled up my email and showed him the timestamp. See? 2:13 p.m. Right after your call, I had the board issue both terminations. Very efficient. That's what happens when you actually own the company. Heath's hands went to his hair, which was thinning at the crown in a way he'd been desperately trying to hide with expensive haircuts. She's going to think I did this. She's going to think I got her fired. Well, technically, you did get her fired, I pointed out reasonably. You're the one who decided to conduct an affair with a subordinate using company email, company credit cards, and company time. Corporate policy clearly states, oh wait, you probably never read the employee handbook, did you? Too busy being the visionary CEO to worry about pesky things like rules. The wine was excellent. I'd bought it last month specifically for celebrating the Pinnacle quarterly earnings report. This felt like a better use. How long have you known? Heath asked, and there was something almost childlike in his voice, like he was hoping maybe this was all very recent and forgivable. About Simone? 8 months? About your other 3 affairs over the years? The whole time. I took another sip. Did you really think I didn't notice when you started coming home smelling like perfume I don't wear? Or when the credit card statements showed charges at hotels in Phoenix when you claimed to be at construction sites in Tucson? His face did that thing again. 3 other. Brittany from accounting in 2019 lasted 4 months. Jessica, the architect, 2021, about 6 months. And that interior designer whose name I honestly can't remember because she was so forgettable, that was 2023, maybe 3 months? I ticked them off on my fingers. You have a type, by the way. 30-something brunettes with daddy issues and questionable judgment. Very predictable. Heath looked like he might actually cry, which would have been more satisfying if I hadn't already mentally moved past this entire conversation. Why didn't you say anything? Because I was waiting for you to be stupid enough to actually leave, I said simply. Arizona is a community property state, Heath. If I'd divorced you while you were still gainfully employed at the company you thought you owned, you'd have been entitled to half of everything. But now? Now you're just an unemployed middle-aged man with no prospects. No reference letters coming your way, and a girlfriend who's about to realize she hitched her wagon to the Titanic. I walked over to where his suitcase sat half-packed on our bed and zipped it closed. Here's how this works. You take your clothes, your golf clubs, and that hideous sculpture your mother gave us that I've hated for 12 years. Everything else stays. The house, the cars, the boat, the investment accounts, the retirement funds. All mine or majority mine. I'll fight this, he said, but there was no conviction in it. With what lawyer? I asked sweetly. The retainer alone will cost you more than you have in your personal account, which last I checked was around $3,400. Meanwhile, I have the entire legal team that's been protecting Pinnacle, protecting my investment, for a decade. They know every loophole, every clause, every single piece of evidence that proves you've been committing corporate fraud. I handed him his suitcase. Oh, and that reminds me, the company car? The Tesla S you've been driving? That needs to be returned to the Pinnacle parking lot by 9 a.m. tomorrow, keys in the drop box. It's corporate property and you're no longer authorized to use it. How am I supposed to get around? Uber? I suggested. Or maybe Simone can drive you. Oh wait, she also had a company car. Guess you'll both be exploring public transportation. Very bonding experience for a new couple. Heath stood there, suitcase in hand, looking lost in a house he'd lived in for 7 years. Ada, please. Can we just talk about this? Maybe we can work something out. We already worked something out, I said, guiding him toward the front door like a bouncer at a club. You wanted to leave. You wanted to sell my house and move in with your girlfriend. Congratulations. You're free. Free from this house. Free from your job. Free from the burden of pretending to be a successful businessman. I opened the front door. The Arizona sun was starting to set, painting the sky those impossible shades of orange and pink that make Scottsdale real estate worth its weight in gold. One more thing, I said as he stepped onto the porch. That buyer for the house doesn't exist. You can't sell property you don't own. I have no idea who you were talking to, but I'd love to know what scam you were trying to pull. Heath's face went pale again. Apparently, there were depths to his stupidity I hadn't even discovered yet. Get out, I said pleasantly. And Heath? Tell Simone I said good luck. She's going to need it. I closed the door on 12 years of marriage, poured myself another glass of wine, and finally let myself smile. The corporate structure was beautiful in its simplicity. The board of directors, comprised of my attorney, my accountant, and 2 business partners who owed me favors, met quarterly. Heath attended as president and CEO, presenting reports, making proposals, feeling important. What he didn't realize was that every major decision had already been approved by me before he even walked into the conference room. That corner office with the sweeping desert views, I approved the lease. The company Tesla he drives, I authorized the purchase. His executive assistant's salary? Approved. The annual bonuses? Me again? Even that overpriced espresso machine in the break room required my signature. The house felt bigger after Heath left. Quieter. Like it was finally exhaling after holding its breath for 12 years. I spent Friday morning doing what any newly single woman does. Changing the locks, updating passwords, and having a very productive call with my attorney about restraining orders, just in case Heath decided to get creative with his anger management. He's going to contest the termination, Marcus warned, his voice crackling through my Bluetooth speaker while I wiped down the kitchen counters. Old habit from my analyst days. Clean space, clear mind. Let him contest, I said, spraying down the granite that Heath always left covered in coffee rings. We have 8 months of documented policy violations, explicit company emails, falsified expense reports, and security footage from the Scottsdale resort showing him and Simone checking in during site visits. I'm not worried. What about the house sale he mentioned? That had been bothering me too. I'd spent Thursday night going through Heath's home office, my home office that he'd commandeered, and found something interesting in his desk drawer. A folder labeled Riverside Property Development, with emails from someone named Derek Castillo. Derek Castillo, as it turned out from a quick LinkedIn search, was a real estate developer in Phoenix with a reputation for flipping luxury properties and an even bigger reputation for not caring about legal details like who actually owns the property. The emails were a masterpiece of masculine delusion. Heath had been negotiating to sell our house for $1.8 million, about $400K over market value, to Castillo's development company. The plan was to close fast and quiet before I noticed. The house with my name on the deed. The house I'd paid for. Men truly live in their own reality shows. I called Marcus back. I need you to do something slightly unethical, but extremely satisfying. My favorite kind of request, he said. I could hear his smile through the phone. By Friday afternoon, Derek Castillo received a very official letter from our law firm explaining that A, the property was not for sale, B, Heath had no legal authority to negotiate any sale, and C, any attempt to proceed would result in fraud charges against both Heath and Castillo's company. But here's where it got beautiful. Marcus included documentation showing that Pinnacle Construction Group had submitted several bids on Castillo's development projects over the past 2 years. Bids that Pinnacle would obviously no longer be submitting, given that the company was under new management direction. Castillo called Heath within an hour. I know this because Heath called me, from Simone's phone, since his corporate cell was deactivated, screaming about how I was ruining his life. Your life was already ruined, I pointed out calmly. I'm just making sure you can't drag anyone else down with you. Professional courtesy. He hung up. Or Simone did. Hard to tell. Friday evening brought an unexpected visitor, Simone herself, standing on my porch in yoga pants and a Pinnacle Construction branded hoodie that she clearly didn't think through wearing. We need to talk, she said, and I had to give her credit. She had the confidence of someone who thought she had leverage. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Coffee? She looked surprised but followed me into the kitchen. I made her a cappuccino with the expensive machine Heath had insisted on buying. Another approved purchase. Heath says you're trying to destroy him, Simone started, wrapping her hands around the mug. Heath has an interesting relationship with reality, I replied, leaning against the counter. He also told you he founded Pinnacle from nothing, didn't he? Her silence was telling. Let me guess, I continued. He said he was this self-made entrepreneur, built his empire from the ground up, probably mentioned something about vision and taking risks? He worked hard, Simone said defensively. He worked for ME, I corrected. For 10 years. I owned the company, I funded it, I made every major decision while he played CEO and took credit. You weren't dating a successful businessman, Simone. You were dating a well-paid employee who happened to have excellent branding. I showed her the corporate documents, same ones Heath had seen Thursday. Watched her face do the same color-draining routine. But the company car, the expense account, She trailed off. All corporate benefits that evaporated the second you both decided to conduct an affair using company resources. I took a sip of my own coffee. Did he tell you he's had 3 other affairs? Or was this true love speech exclusive to you? Simone set down her mug with shaking hands. He said you were cold, that you didn't understand him. I understood him perfectly, I said. That was the problem. I understood that he was a mediocre man with an excellent smoke and mirrors show. But you know what? I funded that show. I made him look successful because it benefited my investment. The second he decided to burn it down, I pulled the plug. What do you want? Simone asked, and there was something different in her voice now. Realization, maybe. Fear? Definitely. Want? I laughed. I don't want anything from you, Simone. You're 32, broke, and unemployed with a termination on your record that's going to make finding another HR job very difficult. You're going to spend the next 6 months realizing that Heath without corporate backing is just an aging man with a BMW he can't afford to maintain and an ego bigger than his bank account. I walked her to the door. But here's some free advice. When you're dating someone's husband, maybe don't use the company email system. Basic tradecraft. She left without another word. Saturday, I spent reorganizing Heath's office into something actually useful. Tore down his motivational posters. All that hustle culture nonsense that men use to justify working 80 hours a week while accomplishing 40 hours of actual work. Donated his golf trophies to Goodwill. Found 3 more burner phones in his desk drawer, which explained how he managed 4 different affairs without getting caught until now. I also found his business plan from 2015, the one he claimed proved his entrepreneurial genius. It was laughable. Financial projections that made no sense, market analysis copied from Wikipedia, and a revenue model that would have bankrupted us in 6 months if I hadn't quietly revised everything through Marcus before we actually incorporated. He thought he was Don Draper. He was actually Michael Scott. Sunday, I went to my favorite brunch spot in Old Town, the one with the ridiculous wait times but perfect mimosas. Sat at the bar, ordered Eggs Benedict, and scrolled through my phone while the Scottsdale social scene buzzed around me. 3 texts from Heath's number, increasingly desperate. We need to talk about my severance package. I have rights as an employee. My lawyer says I can sue for wrongful termination. I replied to all 3 with one message. Your lawyer should read your employment contract section 8.3. Termination for cause forfeits all severance. Have a great Sunday. The bartender, a woman named Claire who'd served me for 3 years, leaned over. You're glowing today. Fresh start, I said, raising my mimosa. What Heath didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that Pinnacle's Q4 earnings were the strongest in company history. The Henderson project had come in under budget and ahead of schedule. The Tempe development was already generating buzz. We'd just landed a contract with the city for a municipal building renovation worth $12 million. Monday morning, I was meeting with the board to officially assume the CEO position. Not as Heath's replacement, as the owner finally stepping into the light. I'd spent 10 years in the shadows, watching my investment grow, watching Heath take credit, watching him treat my company like his personal playground. Now everyone would know exactly who built Pinnacle Construction Group, and Heath would get to watch from whatever apartment Simone's credit could afford. Monday morning arrived with the kind of Arizona sunshine that makes you believe in new beginnings. I wore my power suit, the navy one with the sharp shoulders that I'd bought 2 years ago but never worn because Heath said it made me look too aggressive for a wife. Perfect occasion then. The Pinnacle Construction Group offices occupied the 3rd floor of a glass building in North Scottsdale with views of Camelback Mountain and enough modern design to make visiting clients think we knew what we were doing. Which, to be fair, we did. I'd made sure of that when I approved the lease in 2018. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. I arrived at 8:30 to find our receptionist, Megan, looking confused. Ms., she stammered. Ada is fine, I said, smiling. Is the conference room ready? Yes, but is Mr. Heath coming? He usually opens the board meetings. Mr. Heath no longer works here, I explained gently. I'll be chairing the meeting today. Her eyes went wide, but she nodded. Office gossip moved faster than wildfire in Arizona summer, and by 9:15, everyone would know that something major had shifted. The board meeting itself was satisfyingly brief. Marcus presented the termination documentation. The other board members, all of whom had known the truth for years, officially voted to appoint me as CEO and president of Pinnacle Construction Group, effective immediately. Do we anticipate legal challenges? Asked Patricia, our CFO, and one of the few people who'd known the full story from the beginning. Heath signed an ironclad employment contract, Marcus replied. He forfeits all severance due to the cause of termination. If he wants to challenge it, he'll need to explain in court why he was conducting multiple affairs with subordinates using company resources. What about ongoing projects? This from Tom, our construction manager who'd been with Pinnacle since day one, and had always privately referred to Heath as that guy who shows up for ribbon cuttings. All contracts remain valid, I assured him. Client relationships have always been built on Pinnacle's reputation for quality work, not on Heath's personality. We'll send out a professional announcement about leadership transition, and business continues as usual. The meeting adjourned at 9:45. I moved into the corner office, Heath's former office, and spent an hour removing every trace of his presence. The golf trophies, the motivational posters about crushing goals, that ridiculous photo of him with the governor that he'd photoshopped himself into looking taller. At 11 a.m., the announcement went out to all clients, subcontractors, and business partners. Pinnacle Construction Group is pleased to announce a leadership transition. Ida Winters assumes the role of CEO and president, building on her decade as majority stakeholder and strategic advisor to the company. The responses started rolling in within minutes. Most were congratulatory. A few were confused. Several mentioned they'd never realized Heath wasn't the owner, which was exactly the point. My favorite response came from Richard Patterson, the city contracts manager who'd worked with us on the municipal building project. Does this mean we'll actually get straight answers in meetings now? Congratulations. And about time. Apparently, Heath's vision hadn't impressed everyone as much as he'd thought. At noon, Heath himself showed up. Security called me before he made it past the lobby. Ms. Winters, there's a Mr. Heath here demanding to see you. He's quite agitated. Send him up, I said. But have someone stand by. Heath stormed into my office looking like he'd slept in his car. Maybe he had. His hair was uncombed, his shirt wrinkled, and he'd apparently decided that showing up at his former workplace to yell at his ex-wife who happened to own the company was a good career move. You can't do this, he started, skipping any greeting. I built this company. Everyone knows what I allowed them to know, I interrupted, not standing up from my desk. Power move. And now they know the truth. How's the apartment hunting going? Found anything in your budget? His face turned red. You're destroying me out of spite. I'm protecting my investment, I corrected. You destroyed yourself when you decided to commit corporate fraud and conduct affairs with employees. I'm just making sure you can't damage Pinnacle's reputation any further. Simone left me, he blurted out. And there it was, the real reason for this visit. She said I lied to her about everything. About the company, about my finances, about my future. Well, you did, I pointed out reasonably. You lied about all of those things. She made a smart choice. Heath sank into the chair across from my desk, the same chair where he'd sat countless times pretending to be the boss. What am I supposed to do now? I'm 40 years old with no job, no money, no prospects. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. You're going to do what millions of people do, I said. You're going to update your resume, start job hunting, and figure out how to live within your actual means instead of the inflated lifestyle my money was funding. I gave you 12 years, he said, and his voice cracked. You gave me 12 years of mediocrity disguised as ambition, I replied. You treated our marriage like a corporate benefit package, and me like support staff for your ego. Did you ever once, ask me about my day, my thoughts, my goals? Or was I just the wife who was supposed to smile at dinner parties while you networked with people who thought you were important? He had no answer. Security's going to escort you out, I said, pressing the intercom. Don't come back. If you need to contest the termination, have your lawyer contact Marcus. But Heath? Get a good lawyer. You're going to need one. 2 security guards appeared at my door. Heath stood slowly, looking around the office one last time. The office that had never actually been his. I hope you're happy, he said bitterly. I'm getting there, I replied. They escorted him out. I watched through my window as he crossed the parking lot to a beat-up Honda Civic that I assumed belonged to someone who used to be Simone. Patricia knocked on my doorframe. The Henderson project team wants to schedule a celebration lunch. They're excited about working directly with someone who actually understands construction accounting. Schedule it, I said. And Patricia, order champagne. The good stuff. We're celebrating new management. That afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Simone. Thank you for the truth. I'm moving back to Oregon next week. My sister has a guest room and there's a job opening at a credit union. Not glamorous, but honest work. Good luck with everything. I sent back. Good luck to you too. Oregon's beautiful. Then I blocked Heath's number, Simone's number, and every reminder of the life I'd been funding for 12 years. Pinnacle Construction Group's stock, private but tracked internally, had jumped 8% since the leadership announcement. Turned out investors preferred CEOs who actually owned the company they were running. Who knew? 6 months later, I'm sitting in the same brunch spot in Old Town, same mimosa, different life. Pinnacle just landed the biggest contract in company history, a mixed-use development in downtown Phoenix worth $47 million. The irony isn't lost on me that we beat out 3 other construction firms in the competitive bidding process, including one run by a guy who used to play golf with Heath. Your husband must be so proud, the developer said when we signed the contracts. Ex-husband, I corrected with a smile. And trust me, pride isn't what he's feeling. I still hear about Heath occasionally through the Scottsdale Gossip Network, which operates with the efficiency of the FBI but with better manicures. Last I heard, he's managing a Home Depot in Tempe and dating someone who works in the paint department. They're living in a 1-bedroom apartment near Arizona State University, where the walls are thin and the neighbors are loud. Simone really did move to Oregon. Her Facebook shows pictures of her hiking and posting inspirational quotes about finding yourself after toxic relationships. Good for her, genuinely. The house is quieter now, but it's a good quiet. I renovated Heath's office into a proper home gym. Turns out, I like taking boxing classes, which my therapist says is healthy emotional processing, and I say is extremely satisfying when you imagine the punching bag has your ex-husband's face. Potato. Patricia was promoted to COO. Tom got the raise he'd been deserving for 8 years. Megan, the receptionist, is now in our management training program because she mentioned in passing that she had a degree in business administration and had been answering phones because Heath told her she didn't have the personality for management. Turns out she has an excellent personality for management. Heath just had a terrible personality for recognizing talent that didn't come with cleavage. The most satisfying moment came 3 months ago when Heath's lawyer sent a demand letter threatening to sue for unlawful termination and emotional distress. Marcus responded with 47 pages of documented policy violations, including security camera footage from the Scottsdale resort, that I will absolutely not be describing in detail, but can be summarized as, Heath and Simone were very confident that security cameras don't exist in parking garages. The lawsuit was withdrawn within a week. I've started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee dates with normal men who have actual jobs and don't require me to fund their egos. Last week I went out with an architect named Owen, who split the check without making it weird and asked genuine questions about my work. Revolutionary. My friends keep asking if I'm angry, if I'm bitter, if I regret wasting 12 years on Heath. Here's the thing. I don't regret building Pinnacle. It's a solid company providing good jobs and quality construction. I don't even regret the investment. $340,000 for a company now valued at over $30 million is literally the best financial decision I ever made. What I regret is keeping silent. Playing the supportive wife while a mediocre man took credit for my vision, my money, my work. I regret every dinner party where I smiled and nodded while Heath told stories about his company success. I regret the friends who assumed I was just a stay-at-home wife living off my husband's income. But regret is just expensive tuition for lessons you needed to learn. These days, when I walk into Pinnacle's offices, employees look at me with respect instead of polite confusion about why the boss's wife is there. Clients call me directly instead of asking to speak to my husband. The company culture has shifted. More transparent, more professional, significantly less tolerance for harassment or inappropriate relationships. Funny how that happens when the person in charge actually cares about running a legitimate business instead of using it as a personal dating service. Last week, I ran into Derek Castillo at a Chamber of Commerce event. He pretended not to recognize me until I walked right up to him. "Ms. Winters," he said nervously. "I hope there are no hard feelings about that misunderstanding." "No hard feelings," I assured him. "But if you're looking for a construction partner on your next development, Pinnacle's submitting a bid. We're very competitive now." His face said he'd rather eat glass, but he took my business card anyway. Tomorrow, I'm interviewing candidates for a new VP of Operations position. One of them is a woman who spent 15 years managing large-scale projects for a company in Seattle before moving here to be closer to family. Her resume is impressive. Her references are glowing. When I called to schedule her interview, she asked, "Is this the Pinnacle that was in the news about the ownership change?" "Yes," I said. "Good," she replied. "I'm interested in working for companies owned by women who aren't afraid to own their success." She starts Monday. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's construction. It's building something real with your own name on it, watching it grow beyond what anyone expected, and proving that the person they underestimated was the foundation all along. Heath thought he was selling our house to start a new life. Turns out, I was the house, the foundation, the whole structure. And you can't sell what you never actually owned.